We will begin today with the acknowledgement of country from Councillor Polly.
Oh, yes, good. So we as a council would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land, of this land, the Kabi Kabi, in which this event is taking place. We also acknowledge the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people and their ongoing connection to the land, the sea and the community. We pay our respects to elders, past, present and emerging, and all those who are here with us this morning and meeting us online.
I'll now hand over to Pastor George Miller from Victory Church and also the CEO of Victory College to say a few words of wisdom and then lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Glenn. To our Mayor and councillors and community, it's a great privilege to be here, and I'd like to pay our respects to the God who created us all, heaven and earth. He's the God that wrote in the Bible and has said a lot about what it is to be leaders in the community, and this is very much for the council this morning. A simple statement in the book of Proverbs, chapter 11 and verse 14. It's a proverb that says, "People lose their way without wise leadership, but a nation and city succeeds and stands in victory when it has many good counsellors to guide it." The great leadership book from John Maxwell said, "The truth is that teamwork is at the heart of great achievement. Every worthwhile accomplishment has a price tag attached to it. The question is always whether you are willing to pay the price to attain it in hard work, sacrifice, patience, faith and endurance." So we respect our council and mayor today for the work that they do in our community. So we'll start with prayer. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we pray for wisdom as our council makes decisions for the regions of Gympie under their guidance. To open council in prayer establishes your covering and blessing over our region. Thank you, Lord, for those who have been appointed here as leadership, and we pray for your blessing over them and their families. Thank you, Lord, for your plan to prosper this region and that you give our council favour in the eyes of the people. You have appointed these councillors to serve the Gympie region and that they are able to swiftly address the needs of the community and for the privilege it is to serve our region in this way. We pray for unity and wise counsel so that good strategies and plans may be implemented for the good of the people they serve. Bless the Gympie Council as they meet today. In Jesus' precious name, amen. Let us be upstanding now as we observe a minute's silence to honour and pay our respects for those in our community who are suffering or grieving, even due to the loss of their loved ones. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Jensen, with a leave of absence granted by Council, and Councillor Devereux is here via the interweb. So for those who can't see him, he maybe some would appreciate that, but he is attending the meeting. Disclosures of interest, councillors. Anyone with any disclosures? I have one for 11.1. Confirmation of minutes. We have two recommendations there before us. We'll do one at a time. For the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of September, the ordinary meeting. Councillor Stewart to move, Councillor Smerdon to second. All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. And the second recommendation there is for the special meeting held on the 11th of October. Councillor Smerdon to move, someone to second, Councillor Milne to second. All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. There are no petitions brought for council today. We'll begin our items with item 6.1, quarterly questions taken on notice. And over to Mr. Lewis and Mr. Hatch.
Morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. This morning I'm presenting a report on the quarterly questions taken on notice report. Questions on notice or questions when noticed at council meetings are provided responses to councillors, but just to make sure that in transparency and to the community, we provide a quarterly report that lists the questions and the responses, and if anything further wishes to come back to council, then we can. Has anyone got any questions on the report?
Any questions, councillors? Great, we have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Polly, someone to second. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Polly to speak.
Thank you very much for the update. I read them, got the answers, that's good, and we look forward to the next report. So I'm just happy to move it as tabled.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes, good to have the answer, so thank you. Nothing further to add.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Polly to close.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 6.2, the councillor portfolio policy.
Yep.
I'll hand over to Mr. Lewis and Ms. Hatch again.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council portfolio policy has been presented to council today following multiple sessions that we have discussed in relation to what is the objectives, what is the most transparent way and the most convenient and effective way in getting community viewpoints into council decision making. The council portfolio policy has been amended to make sure that the responsibilities of the councillors, including the divisional councillor and the portfolio councillors, are understood in the policy, and also staff interactions and responsibilities for the meetings. Are there any questions in relation to the draft portfolio paper presented today?
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Milne.
We've had this discussed before, and it has come through different channels that there is a risk associated with the policy as drafted and presented here. Can you explain what that risk is, please?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, that is true, Councillor Milne. There is risk with everything that we take in council, and the discussion was that there is a risk sometimes in these portfolio meetings being influential, or, you know, that more information is given between staff and councillors. But it was robustly debated and discussed I should say, that council wants to be as open and transparent and to be able to include everyone's voice in these conversations, and that was the basis that this policy was drafted today.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Milne.
It references divisional councillors in the policy. They're not actually referenced anywhere outside of the Electoral Act, pretty much, because that's an electoral function as a divisional councillor. I'm just wondering so we've got divisional councillors in here, so all of a sudden we're recognised, so are they automatically have to attend these portfolio meetings, or how it's just the way it's written and drafted?
So again, through discussions at the workshops, the purpose of the divisional councils being mentioned in there is that divisional councillors should be aware of everything that's going on in their division. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have to turn up to a workshop, but it is important because the responsibility of elected members is to do local laws and all these other issues, that comes to their attention. They talk with members of the community, they're to be aware of all issues. So the reasons for the whole council portfolio meetings and briefing sessions are to be informed, and that's why that's recorded in there.
But just to add to that, Ms. Hatcher, I think it's actually a good addition that there is recognition that the divisional councillor should be briefed on everything that affects their division. It effectively it is their patch, so to speak, and they may have a better insight or understanding into what the community wants or needs in that space, and not making a deliberate effort to include them could mean that the organisation misses out on a particular point of view that others from outside the division may miss. So.
I think in addition to that, Mr Mayor, it's also about the culture of being respected, that everyone should know what's going on within their level, every area of responsibility.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Mill?
Well, I do have one on just on your comment. So what you're saying, if this actually goes through, there will be a shift and change and divisional councils will actually know what's going on in their area, because it has been noted that things happen in divisional areas and the divisional council has no idea about it. So are you saying that if this policy goes through, then that will actually automatically shift in the organisation?
Well, I mean, to use the word automatic is probably an interesting word to use. I think there has been a desire for a long period of time to bring the organisation to the point where they understand the role of divisional councillor, and that there is a deliberate effort on the behalf of the organisation to keep the councillors updated on what's happening in their division. If a pothole is being filled, I think it's a complete waste of time to expect staff to advise the divisional council that we're going to fill 5 potholes on this road today or in a week's time. But this policy and the inclusion of the reference to divisional council in this policy relates to things that are of major concern. You won't be discussing which potholes are going to be filled at an infrastructure services portfolio meeting, but you will be talking about the overarching direction of infrastructure services and what are the priorities. And if one of those issues, for example, was moving of a depot or creating a depot in a particular area, that would relate to the divisional councillor, and it should be a matter of respect from the organisation to inform the divisional councillor of that big change. So I think, there is a change afoot. We are moving in the right direction, but I don't think anyone would expect the organisation to, be running around telling each divisional councillor when a park's being made, when roads are being slashed, because that would just create a cumbersome bureaucracy that wouldn't assist anyone. But on bigger projects, on bigger things that affect an area, then I think it's just a matter of respect from the organisation to let councillors know. Councillor Mill?
To furthermore than that, you were referencing the organisation as the information flow. I've actually had a very good experience with the organisation coming back to me as a portfolio councillor and a divisional councillor on all matters that I believe that they had opportunity to come back to. I'm probably speaking more about actual councillors and portfolio councillors and other divisional councillors. This way it reads is like if you turn up to the meeting, you'll get to share and have an understanding, or you may get some minutes, which I don't understand what these notes, not minutes, but notes from each meeting is, because sometimes notes aren't taken really at a portfolio meeting that I go to. It's an information share or an update. So that was more of the question was, it's not I think the organisation does a great job. I think there is a failing on councillors not informing and updating, and I'm not sure that this, the way it's written, will actually void that.
Well, I'm not sure how to answer your statement other than I think there's improvement in the organisation that the CEO has instigated and bringing about, and we can do better. If you're suggesting, that you haven't been updating councillors in a particular area, that's fine. I think this policy looks at identifying areas that we feel we can do better and then putting something in place to do it. Nothing will ever be perfect. It will ever, we're humans. There are always going to be issues in our interactions, but as long as things are done with goodwill and good intent, then the spirit of what we gather for is upheld. And, I think the inclusion of divisional councillor is a relevant inclusion. You want to say something?
Yes, through yourself, Mayor. Look, I should note that we're taking notes on this discussion, but the policy you have in front of you is to look at the portfolio meetings. So that's the scope at the moment that you would be, you're considering. Having said that, you know, we can take in views being expressed to look at that, but yeah, so at this stage, the divisional council role is looking at this, you know, inclusion in the portfolio policies. Is that correct, Ms. Roy?
And through you, Mr Mayor, all of the items that you're raising, Councillor Milne, were risks that we have talked about, and the mitigation measures have also been included in the way we send out agendas and what we've got our template. All of those things are about whatever's happened in the past, we've noticed all these issues, and how we're going to manage it is what's in this policy and in the procedures that we're going to in rolling out these procedures. It is about betterment.
And a recent example, we had a portfolio meeting, and it would have been helpful for a particular divisional councillor to be present at that meeting to give some feedback on some of the proposals, because they are a high level proposal. They will directly affect that divisional councillor, and their specific input can help the organisation focus where they spend their time and where we spend money. Because if we have those conversations up front, particularly with the councillors who represent that community, we may be able to circumvent issues for the future. We may be able to, you know, the consultants or the staff may head down a particular path based on what they know, but that local information from the councillor may reveal, you know, possible pushback areas where a proposal won't be accepted by the community, and we can then deal with those issues as part of developing that proposal early on, or we can simply write it off and say, look, it might seem appealing, but when you talk to the people that are on the ground and that are affected by it, it's not as appealing as what we thought, and you can write that off and move on to other areas. So, you know, I think it's a good addition, a very good addition, because there are things that are going to happen around our region, particularly as it grows, and it's one of the reasons why I like divisions as a council, because we have someone that we can turn to who is responsible for a particular patch. Now, to have that set up in our democratic framework and then not utilise that in terms of the strategic direction and for on-ground information, to me, seems a bit of a waste of an opportunity. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Milne?
Just one more. Reflecting back on when I first started in this role, is we did a lot of the policy review, especially when it affected councillor function. This was one of those policies that we did review. We're doing it now. It's October. I believe that, you know, next year it will probably be reviewed again. So is that potentially what's going to happen is after the next election, unless it's the same line, it'll be reviewed again.
Yeah, so through you, Mr Mayor, we do review them regularly, and when the new council does commence, yes, this policy will be brought back to them. Because it's about how the council communicates and how the council will want to understand and to hear that information flowing.
And also, too, different representatives might want have different expectations.
That's right.
And part of the democratic process is to allow them to facilitate that through a policy. And new elected representatives may be comfortable with this, or they may just turn it on their head and go with something else.
And through you, Mr Mayor, with the corporate plan, we have the values and we have the ways we communicate, our strategic pathways and priorities that we've all had input into, and that has also been considered in the development of this policy to ensure that it meets the strategic objectives.
Any other questions? You're looking a bit itchy there, Councillor Polly. Is that
Keen to go?
we have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Polly. Someone to second?
Nobody wants it. I want it. I've got two hands.
We don't have a second to the motion. Will perhaps Councillor Baldock, Councillor Polly to speak?
Look, it's a living, workable, mouldable policy. It's a vast improvement on what we had. And I suspect that as we live it out over the next year or two, we'll find more problems with it, and we'll just fix those as we go along. And at least we got something that's better than what we had. We're in the right direction, so I'm happy to endorse what we got, knowing that it's not the be-all and end-all, and it'll go ahead.
Councillor Walker.
Happy to adopt new efficiencies, and if you don't try, you don't know. Happy to second.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Councillor Mill.
This proposed policy has been identified as containing risk because it does have the element of actual meetings in it, and that has been identified. If there is risk, I know there's belief that there is improvements in it. I do not believe there are improvements in it. I believe it'll actually distract from our responsibilities as councillors to actually communicate. I feel that's where the failing has come and had been identified out of the existing policy that we did have, is that we weren't talking amongst ourselves rather than the organisation not talking. The only good part that I saw was actually giving a time frame on portfolio meetings, which was the only frustration I had, was when I was told I wouldn't need any from one certain portfolio a long time ago. A council will be re-looking at this when they come in. I potentially will have maybe one portfolio with one portfolio, maybe one or two with another. I don't believe that adopting this today would affect too much more of my functional role within this term, but it may lock into a next term before they can actually get it reviewed, because this has taken a while to get on the table now to be reviewed. I have no problem or issue with the portfolio policy that we actually are acting under. I do not believe it has any holes within, other than that time frame. We should really be concentrating on how we operate and function as councillors and getting the information flow, because we're not giving our reports to council and things like that. So I'm actually not in favour of adopting this today. I would rather not just keep existing on what we've got and then let a new council or whatever happens next year redo all of this. So I'm not in favour.
Any other speakers for or against? I'm happy to speak in favour of the policy. When it originally came, I was probably of the mindset that I was comfortable with where we were. And the more I've looked at it and as changes have been made, I think it is a walk a mile, see a mile process where as we go along, we identify things and tweak policies to suit. They are policies. They are made by men and women, and they can be changed by men and women. And sometimes if you think you are moving forward, you try something new and it's not actually any better, you can go back to what you knew was working. But I think this policy is a step in the right direction. Simply delaying for delaying's sake, councillors in this room have been in this role for 3.5 years now. They have a level of experience and understanding that new councillors won't have. So to take a step now and use your experience and the wisdom that you've gained over a number of years to adopt a policy that has some improvements is leaving a legacy for future elected representatives. And I think that's an important part of a democratic process. They may change their mind if there's new people in the room, but we should do our best to leave things in a better condition as we move on. There can be efficiencies gained by allowing councillors or more councillors to come to meetings. The idea that we'd start a massive email chain after a portfolio meeting because we've limited numbers just creates more work for everyone. More typing, more emails, more reading, more questions, and often a lot of those questions could have been answered or the information might have been of assistance at the meeting. So this is a big change in direction from what I've seen in 7.5 years in local government. It's not perfect. There are some downsides to it, no doubt about that, but I don't believe democracy is perfect in any way. It has to operate, as I said before, under the intent of goodwill and an openness. And I think we've made tremendous steps in openness in this council over the last 3.5 years. And this is another step in openness where councillors can attend meetings and be a part of the information flow. So I'm very happy to support. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Polly to close.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, for Ms Hatch and her staff as the Governance Committee. I really want to thank you for doing your typical over-the-top pedantic way of managing our risk and protecting us from ourselves at times. So thank you for that. I'm happy to endorse this policy and I'm sure we'll make changes down the track, but as it is, happy to recommend it to the Council for adoption.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Polly, Councillor Waldock, Councillor Smurden, Councillor Hartwig. Against? Oh, sorry, and Councillor Devro. A bit smaller than you normally are. And against? Councillor Milne, Councillor Fredman. The recommendation is successful. We'll move on to item 6.3, Gympie Local Disaster Management Plan 2023. Hand over to Ms Hatch, the Herald.
Morning, Mr Mayor. I'd like to introduce, you all know him, our Coordinator of Disaster Management, Mr Murray Herring. Just move over a little bit over to here. Local Disaster Management Plan has been reviewed as it is annually reviewed and we have a lot of learnings from 2022. I'd like to hand over to Murray to give an explanation of how this, the plan was developed and to get to where we are today.
Yeah, good morning, Mr Mayor and Councillors. Thank you very much for allowing me to present this morning on the LDMP and the process that we got here. Slide 2. The slides that I've got just follows the report that was provided to the Mayor and Council and it covers the following points. Okay, the last endorsed version of the LDMP was in November 2021 and it was last exercised in November 2022. There was a number of recommendations from various sources, including the Inspector General Emergency Management guidelines, which helped shape and review the content and the updated version, which you've all been provided a copy of. The review of the LDMP is an annual requirement and needed to meet extant standards and guidelines. It needs to take into account specific events and feedback from across the region that we've gone through over the last year or two. And other revisions were inclusive of consultations with our stakeholders and our close partners in the disaster management space. The current version of the LDMP was presented here today, was approved by the LDMG meeting on the 25th of September 2023. Subplans in concert with the LDMP, we've reviewed a number of subplans, reviewed and are reviewing a number of subplans. Most of these are in the final draft stage right now and will be progressed once we endorse the LDMP. We've got a few initiatives that go along with all of this. The disaster management needs to be both reactive and proactive in the community. There are a number of initiatives being developed with guidance from council leadership and our disaster management counterparts. As you're aware, we recently conducted the Emergency Services Expo and Family Fun Day, which helped break the ice with a small but significant part of the community. We're also actively engaging or about to actively engage in activities across the region with key stakeholders, including our vulnerable persons, businesses, tourism sector and primary producers. There is a lot to do in this space and we'll be seeking occasional support from the broader council workforce to support these endeavours, but they will certainly be led by myself, Laurel, David and the rest. There are no significant implications to the current budget. It's all within the current budget, the LDMP there. And from a policy perspective, we've followed a logical and streamlined process to ensure that essential areas were considered and or included in each of the documents. And finally, we request Council to note the approved LDMP and endorse its publication to the community.
Thank you, Mr Herring. Just before we begin, congratulations on your appointment. You have extensive experience. And it's great to have someone with your credentials in that role.
Thank you very much.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart?
I've got a few pedantic things. On page 20, it's got, I just don't understand what it means. It's got, where's the last paragraph? The majority of usable land in the area lies amongst low hill country use grazing, over 6, 7 commercial crops with areas of reforestation, and I'm not too sure what that means. 6,567 different crops, or is that something just doesn't make sense?
On page 20.
Yeah,
Local
last paragraph, second last sentence.
majority of usable land.
Not sure what it means.
Yeah, their stats taken from this, what's it called? We'll have a look at what that means and make
Taking the
sure it's
census.
clear. Yeah, the census data.
I know number of primary schools. There's at least 4 private primary schools in the region, so I'm not too sure because I don't know which ones you've got, which you might have missed. But there's one at Kaibong.
Yeah.
There's a P10 school at Kaibong, so I don't know whether that's been included or not.
So we'll take that on those, do a review of the schools. We'll do a review of all the statistics.
It's just that it's a bit important that there's something happening.
Yes.
You don't know it's
Yeah,
there.
sure.
That one doesn't matter. There's another one.
Can I just point
That's
out through
probably
you, Mr Mayor, that like these stats and the general LDMP as it's set up is to provide disaster management groups, not just through a response, but in preparedness phase of the demographics and the areas. We also have like the sub-plans that Murray was talking about. We have education as part of the local disaster management group. So as this plan, even though once it's approved, it continues to grow and develop, and it is a guide.
In terms of electricity network, we've only got Energex as an electricity distributor, whereas Ergon's also in the north and west.
Queensland Energy, you know, like,
It's all the one now.
yeah,
Okay, well, then it's not Energex either, is it?
yeah, that's right.
That was probably about it.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Pollock?
Just checking, so as I understand, you said we've got to approve this plan, there's a whole bunch of sub-plans that have yet to be, is that because you're waiting for this, or they're just happening separately?
No, they're being progressed as we speak, and they're getting through. But we wanted to make sure that the master document is correct and got that right before we actually press the button on the other one.
So, through you, Mr Mayor, the master document is prepared. The other ones get tested and do desktop exercise, and they're operational on how the Local Disaster Coordination Centre operates,
Yep.
not only with council's organisation, but also the external agencies' organisations and how we communicate. So they're being reviewed. There's an exercise in November, so that now we can say we've got the local disaster management plan, sub-plans are then tested, and then they will be updated, but they can be updated internally and through the local disaster management group. The requirement under legislation is for the local disaster management plan to be endorsed by the council before it's published to the community.
Yep. All right, so one final question then. So I love how you're drawing the information together, so there's a central repository of information instead of, stuff going everywhere in social media, but how much of the, telemetry stuff is accessible by the public at all? I only think in terms of, I know as the local bus operator, every time it floods, people ring me up, it's Coombe Creeko, because, you live there, why don't you drive down and have a look and let me know? Or there's actually a camera. Can they just access the camera and they can see for themselves, or is the public locked out of this stuff?
Okay, so through you, Mr Mayor, the local disaster management plan, all different agencies have different responsibilities.
Yep.
Department of Transport and Main Road have responsibilities too of their roads,
Yep.
and local council. The disaster dashboard is where we want people to have a look at.
Yep.
To make sure. Now, sometimes the quick flows of sudden flooding, flash flooding, are not always on the disaster management plan. So it's one tool, but everyone's eyes and everyone's responsibility to look out, see, keep information coming. That's what we promote. And so if you have, like we'll be talking to communities about things that they can do to assist one another,
Yep.
but the disaster dashboard, and then any other way that you, through your business, you have your plans yourself,
Yep.
through business continuity planning, that's how you get that information to be able to work for your business or for anyone's, whatever they desire.
Yeah, that's correct, actually, but it seems that a live stream of a video of a creek is much better than, because that was the hassle with the last floods, is
Yeah.
information to the dashboard was way behind realities. But would the public ever be allowed to access those cameras or not, or,
Yes, so we did get funding too through,
Right.
and we will be updating a lot of the capability of that disaster dashboard.
Yep.
But it also depends on how much data can go through events.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these things to be considered too, but yeah, definitely we can have a look at what we can and can't. And we don't also own all of the cameras.
Through
Right,
we
yep.
will endeavour, as the cameras are rolled out, to have that footage, live footage on our dashboard.
Yeah. The,
Oh, it'll crash the system if 100,000 people start logging in, I know, but
That's right. Well, it's also about how much data and the systems talking to the interoperability of the systems between BOM, Department of Natural Resource Management, like all the different departments.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Millie?
I just noticed in emergency services, you've got Queensland Ambulance and Fire and Rescue Services. There's Rainbow Beach is missing of both. They both have stations. So just one of those organic things I thought I'd pick up, like them recognised. But there was one I had one question on. Page is it? It was about the formation of subgroups. Disaster subgroups around the region. Now, we used to have one at the Cooler Coast, but it was, I don't know what the word is, ceased. Is that something we're going to look at doing in the future? It kind of was helpful for a local area because it was part of it for many years. Is that something where we're still continuing on looking how to do that?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we will be looking at the whole of the local government area, not just one particular point. There will be community hubs, and any community can do. They can do their own. The Cooler Coast one, like they can do their own groups to get information, and we will work with them in providing as much education and information as we can. But the Cooler Coast one was disbanded because of the funding, and also we want to make sure that we are covering the whole of the region, not one particular area.
Oh,
Councillor Millie?
it just said developing community disaster subgroups. That's why I thought it was you were developing those through that. Cooler Coast, I believe, was born out of an event, and that's where it came from many years ago. I'm just keen to see that happen region-wide.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, developing interaction with the subgroups. Like the subgroups are formed, they are community groups, and they will be working very closely with us outside and inside a season. But council's not responsible for the actual running of the groups. We are liaising with them as stakeholders.
Other questions? We have a recommendation there before us, councillors. This is someone to move. Councillor Spurgeon, someone to second. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Spurgeon to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a document that any local organisation needs to plan for any natural disaster that may affect the community. Details what council responsibilities are and what the other agencies that we work with, their responsibilities as well, so I'm happy to move.
Councillor Stewart.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the most important parts of the document is the community preparedness and capacity building, and I guess in the end everyone's responsibility for their own safety and their own resilience to get through a disaster. We can't always be there to help because if it's flooded or there's a fire rage, we can't necessarily get there. So, so it's good to see there's that included into the disaster plan is that community preparedness and capacity building.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Spurgeon to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can't always be there to help every resident, but we can put in place education programs that educate the general public on what to do in natural disasters. So this is all included in our plan, so that's good for us. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.4, caretaker policy.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. I'll hand over to Mr. Lewis and Ms. Hatch again.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the caretaker policy is a policy about the caretaker period that's coming up prior to an election. In the policy, it just outlines and makes clear people's responsibilities and information about the upcoming election cycles. Are there any questions on the policy?
Questions, councillors? have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Polly, someone to second? Councillor Deborah?
Yeah, you get on there.
Very interesting. Councillor Polly to speak?
It is what it is. I don't like it as much as the portfolio policy, but we have to have it, and we'll struggle our way through.
Yeah.
Even if we think it's an unfair playing field in our campaigning, but we've got to have something to run by. So happy to endorse what we've got.
Councillor Deborah?
Nothing to add, it's important. Happy to go for that.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Polly to close.
Just happy to proceed.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.5, procurement panel update. Mr. Lewis, Ms. Hatherall.
Through Mr Mayor, this report seeks council approval for two suppliers, AC Hargraves Proprietary Limited and Pensar Construction Group Proprietary Limited, to be added to the mechanical maintenance services panel arrangement, which is with the reference RPQ 0207, with that arrangement to expire on the 26th of July 2024.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I actually ask where these two companies are based? Are they based in Gympie or?
They are both local, in the local area, maybe in the Sunshine Coast, the Gympie region.
Other questions, councillors? Councillor Polly?
It was just for mechanics, basically.
It's for mechanical maintenance services.
Yep.
So we have an existing panel in place.
Oh, right.
Refreshed that panel and extended existing incumbents on that panel.
Yep. It's only to July next year, so
That's right, July 2024, yeah.
quite short, isn't it? Yeah. Right. Fair enough.
I think there is, these panels need to be turned over regularly, particularly given the influx we've had with a lot of different residents, so that we can keep them updated, and new local businesses, people that may move to our region, we can supply service, so have the opportunity to work for council. But I agree, I think there needs to be a better system that isn't as cumbersome and allows the organisation the freedom to bring on contractors without a long-winded process like this. Hopefully in the future we can see something that frees the organisation up in that space.
Through Mr Mayor, we're really heavily constrained by legislation in this space, so we have to bring these arrangements back to you for enforcement. The only way we can not do that would be to seek changes to the Act and the regulations. Basically, this requirement is, we've had a 12-month extension, we're seeking to add these two suppliers to July 2024, and then we will refresh the panel. Thank you.
But in the meantime, Mr Lewis, we're not able to add people to that panel. We are no, and that's the problem I see. That you could have, a young family move to our region. They can provide a service not only for our local residents but for council. And because of some legislative handbrake and hindrance, we can't actually put them on this panel until July next year, which doesn't serve them. And certainly doesn't serve us. So I understand the constraints that staff have, but I still feel it doesn't allow us to do business in the best way, and it doesn't allow us to support our small business owners. And it would be wonderful for the state to make those changes, but I won't hold my breath on that. Any questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Polly, Councillor Wardock to second, Councillor Polly to speak.
Pleased to see it. It's just good to open up the panel and get some good help, all the help we need. So happy to move.
Councillor Wardock.
Yeah, both companies come with specialised services and which will be beneficial to the organisation, so happy to say that.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Polly to close.
I should second it. Sadly, it is a reflection of the fact that it is so hard to actually get good staff to, be full-time employed by council. So sad that we have to actually go outside, but it's the financial market or economic market at the moment. So we've got to do what we've got to do to keep the wheels turning. Happy to proceed.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harrop. Item 6.6, the September financial report. I'll hand over to Mr. Lewis and Ms. Hatherall.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. The report in front of you is our September finance report. Just a couple of highlights. Our operational result is trending slightly higher than where we forecast to be at the end of September. There's some explanations in the report about why those variances are the way they are. Some factors contributing to the underspend in our expenditure are also detailed in the report. Our capital program is trending slightly ahead of where we thought we would be, but our finance officers are working very closely with the assets and capital delivery program team members to try and make sure that the phasing of that budget is reviewed on a monthly basis. Our cash position is quite favourable compared to where we thought we would be, and also compared to last financial year at this same time. Now, a significant portion of that is constrained because we have been receiving advance payments for funding for the recovery works as part of the flood recovery, and those funds will be spent as we start delivering that capital program for recoveries. We're also monitoring very closely those obligations with those grant funds, because we do need to, in some cases, request some extensions, and we have officers in infrastructure, in the capital delivery area and in finance who are in contact with the departments who provide those funds. And it's not just the QRA funds, there are other funds that we're eligible for and we've received. So we monitor them and make sure that we provide the updated reporting for them. If there's any questions?
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Polly?
So, I know we're into October now, but with the end of the last financial years, all of those, that messy hangovers, rollovers and unspent capital all sorted from last year now, so we're in 23, 24 now.
We're in 23, 24. We had our budget review where we addressed all those carry forwards.
Right, yep.
Obviously, they're incorporated in the capital program now. So the team are working towards making sure that now that we have that capital program all sorted out, we keep monitoring it. And there will be adjustments. We come back, there's another report at this meeting where we are adjusting some phasing in the capital program, but that's to make sure that we provide that realistic expectation of what we're going to deliver this financial year for yourselves and the community.
Yeah, so you're saying that's coming up?
Yep.
Right, so we're going to change the capital expenditure budget again already?
It's not changing the total, and that's part of the next report. It's more the team are actually managing the financial milestones of that program more closely.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the delays in grant subs and contributions, we've got 3 areas there which add up to about $500,000. Are those delays the state, or are they putting the applications in or something? What is the delay there? What's causing that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those particular grant funding programs are...
Did you hear that?
Yes, all good.
Page 19.
They're regular programs which happen on an annual basis. There's not an application from council, so this is just, we expected the funds to turn up in a particular month and the transaction hasn't happened from the funds haven't been released from the state. So we'll be adjusting that phasing.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Other questions, councillors? Just on a more of a comment note, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the work that the staff have done in terms of capital. The intersection of Sandy Creek Road and Langley Road was the subject of some black spot funding, and the work that our staff did there was exceptional. As someone that drives that road twice a day, it was a privilege to see the end product and to be able to physically compare the work that our staff did and the standard, and then not that much further down the road to compare the work that contractors had done on some other repairs. And the staff did an amazing job. The standard of the finished product was, it was something I never thought I'd get excited about, roadworks and why. It's amazing what they've done, and now they're on to widening that narrow, dangerous section of Sandy Creek Road in front of the hall where the old hall used to be. So I'm looking forward to that one being completed. But if you could pass on to the staff, Mr. O'Byrne, how amazing. It was the quality of work, I think, that really impressed me. It was, if you took the stone off, you could have put little pockets around and played pool on it. It was that flat. So it was a wonderful job by the team. Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second. Councillor Polly, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Mayor, I'd like to thank staff for the report. It's good to see that a bit of a higher surplus than expected. And it's also actually good to see the CapEx is actually more than what we expected, because I think in every previous year I've been on council, previous 6-7 years, it's been behind. Our CapEx has always been behind, meaning we're not getting the roads built, we're not getting footpaths built or whatever. So it's actually good to see CapEx actually running ahead of budget, because it means we're actually getting things like roads done. So thank you.
Councillor Polly.
Mr Mayor, I'm not sure. I'm struggling these days to find issues to raise. So I think that's a case of the staff are getting on it, and the reports are much more up to date and accurate, and it's good to have. So happy to accept this report.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.7, the 23-24 budget amendment, first quarter budget review. And over to Mr Lewis Smith-Hasrell.
Mr Mayor and councillors, under the legislation, council will have the ability to review the budget at various times during the financial year. Last meeting we came to you with the budget review to adjust our capital program to reflect those carry forward budgets. This budget review, whilst there are immaterial or minor changes, this is more in line with trying to make sure that we maintain a budget that is reflective of our actuals. There are some changes that are minor in relation to operational revenue and operational expenditure. The capital program has had some changes in terms of phasing and adjustments to some projects where the team have looked at the cycle of the budget in terms of project management and changed a little bit of that program, but the overall result is the program still is the same total that was adopted at the start of the financial year. There is no overall impact to council's long-term financial position, and if you have any questions at all, I'll take those.
Any questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Don't all rush. Councillor Stewart, someone to second. Councillor Polly. Councillor Stewart to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, we just got to adjust the budget from time to time. Probably the biggest, well, it's not so much a concern. Some people might see it as concern that the operating surplus is actually a deficit for this year, next year, but that's because, as we know, we're spending large amounts of money, particularly on computer systems, which we would think is capital, but other people think is not. But when you look at the underlying operating expenses, operating budget, it's actually a surplus, so that's good.
Councillor Polly.
Nothing exciting, it's just a timing issue, so just happy for the update. Happy to endorse.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. The quarterly investment report. This is another bell ringer, isn't it? I'll send over to you, Mr. Lewis and Ms. Atherall.
Mr Mayor and councillors, this quarterly investment report is part of our commitment that is included in our 2023-24 investment policy. The report provides you an update on our performance against budget, and as you can see, due to the higher cash balances we have and also the higher interest rates available in the market, our cash investments are performing quite well compared to where we thought we would be. I'd just like to make a quick note. There's a little paragraph in this report which talks about the amount of interest recorded in this report versus what's in the financial statements. Those numbers are different because this is purely around our investment balances, not about interest on outstanding debts, which are included in the September report. If there's any questions at all?
Questions, councillors? I thought so, Councillor Polly. This is always one that attracts your attention.
I take it you've done the 250 each to Oswide, and because they're local investments?
Yep.
So can we pump those numbers? Because 250 is just petty cash, and it'd be good to see $500,000 sitting somewhere in Gympie.
We are monitoring those at the moment in the term deposits, and we'll look to start perhaps investing in some other local banking institutions.
Oh, I'm happy just to do more on those too, if you want.
Yeah.
We know it's a good cause,
Yeah.
and we're not exactly at risk for that.
Yeah, so we monitor them, and we're looking at increasing them when those term deposits come due.
So next month then we'll hear about it.
I don't think it's due next month.
I don't know how you're going to sleep.
Oh, it's just
Getting so excited about this.
how long's monitoring go for? Yeah, I know, it's great, but come on.
Our investment guidelines are governed by our investment laws, which is our main priority, is preservation of capital.
Yeah.
So, and we do try and support where we can those financial institutions, but we will always look, and we are constrained by the amount of dollars we can place in those institutions based on their credit ratings.
Yeah. So are we banging on that limit now, or we can do more?
Through Mr Mayor, we have placed $500,000 investments in term deposits previously. We're conscious of the fact that whilst we have a substantial cash balance, the majority of that is actually constrained. So we are managing it in terms of what the unconstrained cash balance is. And we do place those. There may be some institutes which come in as we lead up to the termination of these investments, which have better interest rates, but we just make sure that council's protected. We are a little bit conservative because we have that obligation to protect that cash.
Any other questions, councillors? I have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Polly, Councillor Smurden, the second. Councillor Polly to speak.
Look, we almost got somebody almost added a bit of flavouring beyond vanilla, so we're almost the way to butterscotch. So, but happy to accept the report as it is.
Councillor Smurden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I must say it's good to see our investments are performing better than what they were and can hopefully continue to do so.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? The other speakers for? Councillor Polly to close.
Nothing further to add. Happy to proceed.
With that, we'll go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Lewis, Ms Hatherall. Item 7.1, Community Grants Program, Round 1 Funding Recommendations. Hand over to Mr Burns, and I'm assuming Ms Stark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If it pleases the councillors, I'll just wait for Ms Stark to come in. She's in the room next door. She has a number of papers with her for one of the next items, so I'm sure she's just gathering them up. In essence, So you said community grants,
Yes.
Mr Mayor, is it the public art policy?
Yeah, no, the community grants was
Grants
first and
first.
then the art policy second.
Because we've got the,
7.1.
we had the arts, culture one and.
No, no,
So
it's
what's-
the other
7.1. You want
Yeah, 7.1.
Scroll too far.
Community grants first. Through you, Mr Mayor, if you may, we'll take the report as read, however, Masaki is here to provide some salient points and answer any questions that may be coming from council. For you, Councillor Devereux was on the laptop.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. So Council's community grants policy and guidelines for 23-24 were endorsed by Council at its ordinary meeting on the 28th of June 2023. Council officers administer the grants program in accordance with that policy, the guidelines and the budget allocations. So in line with our adopted guidelines, Council has 2 competitive grant rounds and 1 rolling round this year. So the report before you today is in regard to competitive round 1, which was open to the community from the 7th of August to the 17th of September. As outlined in the report, there are 8 categories in round 1 of the competitive grants program. In order to ensure the community were aware of the grants program, we undertook a total of 8 information sessions and 2 workshops during July and August of this year, of which 56 people attended those sessions. So councillors, the assessment process, in addition to that, information was provided to applicants via email, in person and over the phone, and that was to over 70 contacts with our team. So the assessment process is undertaken in accordance with the eligibility assessment criteria outlined in the guidelines. In terms of what we received for round 1, there was a total of 39 applications which were received. 2 of those applications were assessed as being ineligible, so there was a total of 37 eligible applications. Officers are recommending 22 of those grant applications. There are a number of first-time applicants, and there, as I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of people attended our grants information sessions. So, councillors, as outlined in your report, we have listed the applicants and recommended projects, which is a total of $195,827,000, which is in accordance with the allocated budget for grants for this year. I would like to highlight for councillors that this is just round 1 of our grants program. We have rounds 2 early next year, and the councillors be aware that we also have a rolling grants round. So as recently, we've had 26 applications through the rolling round, which is for our Get Local grants, which are proving to be very popular within the community. Those are those grants which are up to $1,500 for small local events. So this isn't the only allocation that will occur this year. We've got round 1, the rolling rounds, and round 2. Over to you, Mr Mayor, for any questions.
Thank you, Ms Stark. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart?
I think staff are aware of this question. There are a heap of applications that were not recommended and it ran at 44% roughly, so which seems a lot higher than normal. Is there any explanation why and any way we can address that issue?
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you. As I outlined previously, there was a range of support provided to applicants, the information sessions, etc. Of the 17 that were not recommended for funding, 9 of those groups did not attend information sessions or reach out to council staff. That's not to say that they'll never get up if they don't contact staff, but what it does demonstrate is that the applicants may not have the same level of understanding about the grant priorities and the eligibilities. Put in for expenses that were simply ineligible under the grant program, or secondly, one was a school, for example, which was an ineligible applicant for one of the categories. In terms of the quality of applications, this round there was a comparatively not as high a standard in other rounds. Again, it could be because not all the applicants attended the information sessions and reached out to council staff. There was also within the environment category, we did notice that many of the applications were for what would be considered ongoing activities. So officers are considering reviewing particularly the environment category to ensure that it's hitting the mark in terms of the what the environment strategy is looking to achieve, and what the grant programs do. So in terms of the other categories, I'm confident that the amount that were applied for and that were recommended was around about 50%. Those areas that were slightly under was the environment category, and I do think there needs to be some work in that space to better explain to potential applicants what the guidelines do cover off, and or that we look at reviewing those guidelines potentially prior to round 2, or we just work more closely with the environment groups around eligibility and what they can apply for.
Any other questions, councillors?
Councillor Milne. Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Just on that environment grant, because I know it's something that's come through and it's obviously changed in the last few years, because that one's a category that it could possibly, what you're saying is ongoing projects and programs that we're supporting and had to go through grant rounding and anyway. So that it's something that to be able to maybe relook at that as in guidelines before the next round might be beneficial for outcomes for environment to actually get some more successful applicants, because if they weren't there might have been stuff that we've been doing before, or is there other streams or funding stream ways that we can do this? Like a Water Watch program is something that I know that's always done a lot, it's cross-council outside of us. I would like to be able to think that our council can continue these valuable programs that are continuing over many years through some sort of funding, whether it's grant rounding or something else. So that's one of those priority to actually try and ensure we could possibly do it some way.
Through you, from the office's perspective, that is what has been evidenced through this grant round, is that my understanding is that we do need to have a look at that, in that so many applicants did apply for what would be considered ongoing or core activities. We have Cat's Claw in the region, that's not going away, so there'll be ongoing need to do that type of work. So what we need to do is either, as I mentioned through the Mayor, is work with those groups to say, are they part of your core ongoing activity? Do you need to fund those out of other funding sources and apply to council for the one-off projects through the grant program? And or do we need to revisit our grant guidelines to enable a different type of grant, if you like, through the environment ones, if it is going to be for those ongoing ones, which we would obviously need to bring back to council for council consideration.
Just in relation, we start to the example you've used, Cat's Claw, I thought part of our grant funding with those groups was that they could deal with those ongoing issues around Cat's Claw, because we have given them funding on that basis in the past.
I might sit down, I'll refer to my notes. Indeed, Mr. Mayor, just 2 moments. We can either take it.
Maybe just take that on notice if you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the grant guidelines as they're currently adopted by council reflect project-based work, and it actually says in the grant guidelines here, major projects. So the group should be applying for projects that are in addition to what would be considered to be the business as usual work. Council does need to review whether we are going to fund sustainability in terms of ongoing maintenance of environment work, such as some of the land care projects. We do that through the Land for Wildlife setup and through other avenues with the environment team. But officers are in the process of preparing an environmental social governance document, which will come to council in the very near future. That document basically is an update and review of the environment strategy and pulls into it some climate change and sustainability policy models. That document should outline to council and seek guidance from council on how we wish to manage these business as usual ongoing projects, such as land care groups looking after Cat's Claw and other products. The grant guidelines were written to look at more specific, tangible start and finish projects rather than an ongoing business. So that's really the difference here. And Some of the groups have, as Ms Stark referenced, some of the groups applied for those ongoing projects which weren't eligible. So we might need to either review the guidelines to reflect an allowance for that, which we'll do once we've got council's feel on the social governance.
Yeah, I thought we had in the past, given funding, was that under a different guidelines?
Yes, right, so their significant funds have gone to projects like this in the past. And
well, the cat call Ms Stark is a fine example of where there needs to be an ongoing assistance there, because it's that one's like rat's tail, it's never going to end. And so how long ago did we change those guidelines?
So the guidelines are reviewed each year, and as mentioned, officers' role is to assess in accordance with those guidelines, and it states quite clearly in the guidelines that if the program or project has commenced already and it's considered ongoing, then it is not eligible. So, and there has been a strict adherence to that as officers. What we're seeing though is it may not be achieving the intent of what council is seeking to achieve through its environment strategy.
I think council would like to have a look at those guidelines and give staff the freedom to deal with those projects like Cat's Claw and others that are ongoing and will be ongoing forever. Because I think we had allocated funding in the past for those ongoing programs. So a review of those guidelines and brought back for adoption would be appreciated.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we will be reviewing them again. We do review them every year. There's a point that we picked up from this year's funding round. If you remember, we went from one funding round last year to two this year because, as part of that review, because that was one of the things that we picked up last year. This is a new thing this year. In answer to your first question, these guidelines were revised significantly 2 years ago. So this change probably came in approximately 2 years ago. Although the condition around projects not being eligible if they've already started has been in for quite a number of years.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the council will be aware that it wasn't until quite recently that the environment grants actually came into the overall community grants program, and they were being administered separately. And since we've brought them all together, we are finding some needs for nuance within the grants program. So taking on board your comments, Mr Mayor, staff would be pleased to come back to council with revised some options before round two, if that's what councillors would like. I think that we've got caretaker.
I think that
we're happy to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, you've identified an issue and we can deal with it as ASAP. Right. Councillor Milne.
Oh, well, that was just one of the questions. It was I think it has been answered because of how long has this actually been in the guidelines? I must have missed it, or it must have been not understood, because I know we had allocated funding before. So it's just obviously that's maybe an oversight in assessment, or it's just assessed differently now.
So through you, Mr Mayor, the environment levy sort of ceased around 4 years ago. That was when the environment grants started to come into the guidelines, and then they were brought in 2 years ago?
22-23, so it was just last year that the environment categories came into the overall
ongoing project.
Had been enabled through the previous project.
So, but last year we did fund some, didn't we? Cat's Claw, and that was funded last year, I believe. So it made it through that one.
It depends how the application is written each time. So if the applicant was able to demonstrate that was a new project or a new phase, it may have been considered
or a
new area.
Councillor Milne.
This is the next question, probably a process and governance question, is that we are going to go into caretaker mode at some stage, and probably before the next grant rounding. Is this something that covers guidelines under the caretaker policy that we just did? Can we review them in time for the next grant phase? That's just a concern I've got now.
Will there be an ordinary meeting in January?
Yes, there is.
Yes. We could bring it to
I think
January.
We have time.
Missed that staff would go back and it would be brought to council at the earliest possible.
I'm just ensuring that we can under the
It's
circumstances.
a minor change to a document. It shouldn't require a lot of work.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we just had a quick chat. We're quite confident we can bring it back to the ordinary meeting in January. That notwithstanding, I actually believe that minor revisions in guidelines such as this would be still acceptable to be done in February and March council meetings, which will still occur because there's a Government Act requirement for that to happen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we also have a timing imperative in that round 2 opens in February, so we would need to get it done.
Great. Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? Councillor Mill, Councillor Stewart speak.
Mr Mayor, it's good to see wide range of groups with lots of different interests from across the region that council can support. So I'm happy to move this recommendation.
Councillor Mill.
Community groups provide valuable service in our, for our communities. There's a range here. It's something that we should do as a council to be able to support our communities through grants. I'm actually pleased to see that a rigorous process has been applied to this, and actually the grant applications I'm aware of, groups and stuff like that I've been involved with, and I remember one was quite weak, and I was actually happy council refused it at one stage. What it does, it actually enables them to be stronger for next time and also be able to project manage that as well. So it is disappointing for some groups not being funded this round, but we do have two rounds this financial year, so I look forward to seeing a lot more on this list next time, but I'm really happy that these guys are on here for now, and I look forward to seeing what they do with the funds.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
That will go the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.2, the Arts and Cultural Strategy for 2023 to 2028. Mr. Burns, Mr.
Mayor, sorry?
I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Arts and Cultural Strategy is due for review. It has been to workshop, it has been to public consultation. There have been a number of revisions. It's been to workshop after that public consultation. And this year we've brought the public art policy into this report as well. This is the current state of play report and where we're at with it. And Ms Stark is here to answer questions. We'll take it as read, but there are some salient points that Ms Stark would like to raise.
Thank you, Mr Burns. As outlined by Adrian, this has been brought to Council on 2 occasions beforehand. The purpose of today's report is to bring the final documents to Council for your final consideration. The new Arts and Cultural Strategy identifies priorities to develop and celebrate arts and culture in our region for the next 5 years, and the public art policy has been revised to include more contemporary forms of public art, such as digital artworks and large-scale projections. Councillors, we did provide you with a comprehensive report at our workshop, and for our listeners online and in the community, there is an executive summary of the consultation report which is attached to this report, and we'll also make that available on Council's website. So without further ado, we will present this report to you with the recommendations outlined in the report.
Any questions, councillors? We have 2 recommendations there. I think we'll deal with them separately as they deal with individual documents. Recommendation 1 in relation to public art policies. Is someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? Councillor Devereux. Sorry, a bit of a lag time there on the interweb. Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, it's been a long process, and I know I've been involved in different bits of it. And it's been good to see how the community has come together. There has been frustration, I think, during this term because partly the Civic Centre still not operating, and I know that's great frustration for a lot of the community. And I guess there's a perception, partly based on reality, I think, that arts was sort of pushed out of council a little bit when we're going back to basics. What does that mean? So I think it's good to have this commitment from council to the arts and culture sector, because without arts and culture we have a very boring, dead community. The central vision, creativity and culture connect and empower us, celebrating our stories, our people and our places. Together we see what the Gympie region can be and we create it. So to me, that's a very dynamic sort of vision, and the outcomes are quite dynamic. So I'm very happy to move that we accept this arts and cultural policy. One of the things is there's no particular actions in here, and there was discussion, I know, around action plans, and they're going to have action plans every 5 years or whatever. Instead, we moved to being more dynamic about that. The action plans to be developed, partly in response to community push, I guess, partly in response to our capacity, rather than trying to have static action plans. So I think that's a good thing. So I'm happy to move.
Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the most disappointing thing about our the public art and so forth is going to meetings like the public consultations, and the biggest complaint is that council hasn't been supportive. So I'm hopeful through this that council can turn that around and be seen as being supportive to the arts. I think people have a misunderstanding that it supports individual artists rather than seeing the big picture of what it does for an area. Just in creating positive mental outcomes when you see a nice bit of art or something that spices things up. And to get an idea of that, you've only got to walk around the duck ponds, which have a couple of nice pieces, and it makes you feel good. So I'm hopeful that through this, the council can be seen to be doing a lot more than what people's perception has been recently. Thank you.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
That will go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Recommendation 2 in relation to the Gympie Regional Council Arts and Cultural Strategy 23 to 28. Is there someone to move? Councillor Milne, someone to second. Councillor Polly, Councillor Milne to speak.
This is a long time coming. I remember when we were first doing the review of our last plan. It has been a long drawn out process, but there have been a few things in the way that we've had going on the last couple of years. I did note in the feedback that there was a fear that feedback from the community and stakeholder groups was not going to be listened to. I do believe that it has been listened to, and officers have done quite a good job of trying to collate all of those views, because it is when you talk creative sector, it is very, very, very broad. And the cultural vision, I did see it, and I went, that does, from what I heard when I was in the forums and that, it does encompass that. And also the outcomes that are written there, they're strategic outcomes, and I always say they're not actually, like we're saying, as an action planning. It's can we plug in what we need to do from that strategic outcome desire? And I do believe that officers have taken, and it's some simple words and simple phrasing can mean a lot, or take something on a different road or journey. So I'm reading the actual strategy itself, and there's a few changes from the feedback that we've gotten from the community. I hope that is encompassed and taken. It does satisfy what they need to achieve from us. The second part from the feedback that I did recognise was that there was a lack of faith that council could deliver on what we're looking for. So I'm hoping moving forward, as we've actually gotten the strategy, and I think we've done quite a good job with that, now that we can actually move into the delivery phase within our capacity. So I'm really excited to see we've actually got something here written down. It's had the robust feedback, and then we can move forward together as a community and a council and make it happen. So yeah, thank you very much.
Councillor Polly.
Mr Mayor, far be it from me to wax lyrical about arts and culture. But I was actually reminded of a story from C.S. Lewis, the great philosopher of the last century, who was in an air raid shelter in London. They're all getting bombed on. They're in an air raid shelter, and him and his mate are talking philosophy, and people over there are talking about an opera, and people over there are talking about a theatre show, and he's just amazed that even in the middle of human tragedy happening above them, culture and art is still being progressed, and people are looking forward to what they're going to do as soon as they get topside again. So culture and art is a bit like a little seed. It's only got to fall into a crack in the cement, it gets a bit of moisture, and it will shoot and blossom. So I just hope that I can see this strategy here will provide the means for all that Gympie has been through and yet to go through, that culture and art will continue to survive and blossom make Gympie all that it is meant to be. So I'm happy to endorse the strategy. Thanks.
2 speakers for the recommendation, 2 speakers against. Any other speakers for? Councillor Milne to close.
I'd just like to move on from, add to that. But no, it is a great story because we do undervalue what the creative, the arts sector actually does. What it does is it seeds and it grows something inside of us. It provokes conversations, it provokes thought, it provokes change, it challenges us as a community. And sometimes, those art pieces or those creative pieces, which we think of it as a visual, like a picture or a painting or a projection. It could be the written media, it can be sound. It is that other element of us as a community or a person, individual, that can be stimulated by this, and it can enhance, it can make something so much better. So I'm really happy that we can actually just move forward with something now. Let's just grab it, let's go, let's run with it, and let's move forward. So happy to get this motion on the table and hopefully get it all supported. So thank you.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.1. Thank you, Mr. Burns. Infrastructure Services Director report.
Oh, you can. That's right.
Ready when you are, Mr. Burns. Oh, sorry, Mr. O'Byrne.
Thanks, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, first of all, councillors, I'm proud to address my trademark today. You notice the time there. It's an initiative not of my own, but of trademark. So I encourage everyone that's not trademarked the whole premise around mental health and wellbeing. We get focused significantly on the external workforce with the trademark high-vis shirts, etc. But it is very important to recognise that we do also have our health and wellbeing challenges within the office environment. So that's the tie and the matching handkerchief. Enough said, Mr. Mayor. Through yourself, look, I'll take the report as largely read, but I would like just to summarise some high-level aspects if I can. First of all, with regards to the capital delivery and assets portfolio, we are progressing two key projects: the project management framework and the asset management framework and asset management plans, and they're progressing on track as we speak. I will note with the asset management plan, we brought forward the water and wastewater asset management plans that have been were anticipated to be delivered late in 24. We're now actually progressing those and aiming to deliver those asset management plans to inform our long-term financial planning by the first quarter of next year. From a regional roads and transport group perspective, I also note that we are progressing the development of our program under the TIDS state-funded program, and we'll be bringing that in summary to council early in the new year, most likely post-election, Mr. Mayor. From a capital works program perspective, as mentioned in the finance report, we are progressing on track, and there's a significant emphasis on forecasting ahead of the program for that delivery. So that will then enable us to actually maintain on track with regards to budget and budget performance and also the reporting steps. I'll highlight that we are bringing forward in the next month's workshop schedule a full summary of both the flood recovery program and also the CapEx program. So that will be workshopped with council in its totality, and that'll set the scene moving forward as to how we're intending to report on the CapEx program and also the flood recovery program. In the roads sense, in the operations sense, probably the key highlight is we're actually continuing to catch up on the backlog of grading works, and works teams are significantly on track to achieve that catch-up by the end of the financial year. So that's a great effort by the team. From a property and open space perspective, there's a couple of initiatives we are progressing with, in particular, championed by the new coordinator, Rick Johnson. Mr. Johnson, who's a new appointee, has really been assisting Mr. French in progressing some maintenance rescheduling and some maintenance tweaking and efficiency gains. It's great to have a fresh pair of eyes into that section of the business. So we welcome Mr. Johnson's contributions for the future as well. The water and wastewater space. What I would like to do, councillors, in this summary is really just give you an update in relation to the Southside pressure issues we're currently experiencing, which is actually outside the reporting phase of the report you've got in front of you. That I think it's a very topical issue that it's appropriate that I provide an update to council as well as the public. So as I think everyone is aware, we are experiencing some significant pressure issues on the south side, especially Lindsay Street and Watson. We are actually taking immediate action. We actually have programmed in our CapEx program some work to be undertaken. There's an immediate solution we're actually investigating right at the moment. We've engaged consultants to look into that. We'd like to think that we can actually get that immediate temporary solution in place which will assist with the pressure received by those customers in that immediate vicinity. That immediate solution within the next few weeks, we'd like to think is actually up and running. From a permanent fixed point of view, we've engaged consultants to actually progress with inline pumping, booster pumping in the area, and that will then permanently resolve the issue. That is actually part of a long-term solution that has actually been planned for quite a long time and is actually in our capital budget. So we're bringing forward that permanent solution, but in the interim we're actually progressing with an immediate solution, which we anticipate, as I said, will be in place within the next couple of weeks. So further to that, Mr Mayor, any questions?
Questions, councillors?
Yeah.
Councillor Polly?
3-4 weeks doesn't seem very immediate, that's all I'm thinking. You know, like when you have a water break or you're doing some planned work, you usually bring a truck in, you start pumping water to the affected people, but people are out of showers at the moment, so how do we make immediate, like this weekend and not 3 weekends' time sort of thing?
So councillor, it's not as quick and easy as doing something like that. So we do recognise that it is a significant issue for the customers that are affected. And actually in that space we are actually making personal contact with those customers that are affected. So we're doing that today and tomorrow.
Right.
So we'll be actually, and then liaising with them, keeping them up to date with exactly the progress for the immediate solution and the long-term solution. So from a, if I can just talk about the immediate solution or the short-term solution, what we are looking at the moment is recommissioning, for example, the water tower that's there at the moment. We've discovered, that the power is disconnected, and the power supply and the infrastructure electrically needs dramatic attention, so we can't just switch that on. That's not something we can make happen overnight, but that, along with some other short-term fixes, are being investigated at the moment.
Yeah. So sometime somebody decided in the past just to decommission that old water tank and just stick an inline pump in somewhere.
Correct. Wow. Yeah. So all I can say is, from a long-term solution perspective, there's a significant amount of engineering design work that needs to be undertaken, hydraulic analysis. If you fix a pressure situation in one part of the network, potentially it has impact on another part of the network. So you need to be cognizant of that. So it might sound simple to just go and fix that one area, but the add-on and flow-on effects, excuse the pun, it might be negative in other areas.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux?
Thank you. Through the mayor. I have been talking to a fair few people online about this, I'm glad you're going to go and have some communication with people, because that has been one of the things that they're saying they haven't had. That there was this problem, they weren't contacted regarding it. I do have a question about the pressure. Is it in peak periods only, or is it all the time across the board?
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor, it predominantly in peak periods, but it's influenced by other factors. For example, when the water carriers, for example, the network in that area is so sensitive that when we actually have water taken just by water carriers actually extracting water from another part of the network, that dramatically impacts the pressure. The actual level of the reservoirs we need to actually maintain in order to provide the adequate pressure is not acceptable, and that's why we're actually addressing. So to answer your question, Councillor, it is predominantly in peak periods, but it can actually be outside of that as well.
Just further to that, you're talking about the water carriers. Have we, I'm assuming we have, but just to be clear, have we contacted them and told them where they're to go instead of told them not to go to certain ones if that affects it?
Yeah, Councillor, we have actually been addressing that with the water carriers as recently as the last couple of days, yes.
What was that?
It has been addressed, or they have been spoken to in the last couple of days.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I am having a little difficulty getting every bit there, so I hope I didn't repeat anything that was said. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? No. We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Fredman. Someone to second? Councillor Stewart. Councillor Fredman to speak.
Mr Mayor, it's good to be moving a motion in the more exciting part of the agenda today. I'm staggered that this Directorate, Infrastructure Services, has got enough time and enough staff to write a 10-page report. Normally, brevity has been the rule with any reports from the department, and I hope as soon as you can, you get the people who write these long reports back into fixing water supply problems and fixing roads. And nonetheless, it is a thorough report. That's good. It's much better than your tie selection today. Staff in this directorate are super busy, and I don't think we expect reports this comprehensive every time, but nonetheless it's refreshing and good, and it adds some excitement to our morning at council here.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's good having comprehensive reports, though I do take note that they do take time. I just note a few things like the Cedar Pocket Hall roof. I know the local committee is very happy with that replacement, even though it caused some power problems for the fire brigade. But anyway, and in the same area and on the line to what the Mayor was saying a couple of 10 minutes ago or whatever, East Deep Creek Road is amazing. The quality of the work that's been done. And I know the local residents, ones I've talked to, are really appreciative of the widening of that last section of East Deep Creek Road, and you could almost play billiards on it. So thank you very much for that, and it was good to hear the update on the water on the south side, and I think that's a lesson in terms of we need to make sure we're spending what we need to on our water and sewer services. I've said over quite a few years that I think we've been taking too much money out of there into general revenue. We need to make sure we spend the money we need to on the water and sewage network.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Mill.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to thank for what is a comprehensive report, and I do understand that it is a very, very busy department. It is really good to see some of the small operational stuff that we probably ordinarily wouldn't see, minor stuff like more park files and things like that. It's just to understand there's a lot of back-end work that goes into a lot of what people see, which is forward facing or actually having a delivery service of. So this is, I really enjoy reading these reports, and in 10 pages, I'm happy with a 30 page, but I know it takes time to do that. I'd also like to commend you on having the trademark initiative. We're not doing a brand endorsement here, but for inside and outside, it is Mental Health Month being October, and I thought it was very fitting to actually highlight that the team is actually doing really good work in this space as well, which is not in the report, but it's obviously it's noted, and I think it's a good addition to the whole branch and also the whole council. So thank you.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Fredden to close.
Nothing to add, Mr Mayor.
We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.2, rationalisation of council land holdings. Mr O'Byrne.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, through yourself. We'll take the report as being read, but I'll just ask if Mr Cummings would like to actually add any key comments.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors. Through you, Mr Mayor, this is another 2 properties that were identified as part of the Phase 1 land audit. We needed to gather some more intel of whether council do have any desire to retain these blocks, and our investigations have shown that we don't. So hence why we're putting this up to you today for a resolution to start the marketing process on these 2 lots that are surplus to council's needs.
Any questions, councillors? Have a recommendation in 3 parts there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Smurden, someone to second? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Smurden to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's good to see that we're progressing with some of these sales. Council does own a fair bit of land that we don't normally use that much, so we might as well give it to sell it to someone that can use it. So happy to move.
Councillor Stewart.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
With that, 2 speakers for the recommendation, 1 speakers against. Any other speakers for? Councillor Smurden to close.
Happy to move.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.3, consent for state disposal of land held in trust by council. I'll hand over Mr O'Byrne.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor, through yourself. Again, you take the report as read. So, Ms Cummings, anything?
No, just through you, Mr Mayor, this was the report that was brought to council workshop back in September around this encroachment, and at that point our guidance was to bring it back for a resolution to get this matter resolved.
Any questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Someone to move? Councillor Waldock, Councillor Polly to second. Councillor Waldock to speak.
Just happy to reduce our liabilities. So happy to move.
Councillor Polly.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that we're not selling the land, we're just giving back our trusteeship of it, so the state can sell it to the neighbour who wants it. So just happy to facilitate that motion.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smurden.
Yeah, I just think it's a good move on council's behalf. It's going to resolve a problem that the landowner has, so it's a win for him and a win for council.
If there's no other speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Waldock to close.
Yeah, happy to move.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. That concludes our
in committee.
Part of our we'll stop for a short tea break. We'll go and deal with I, Glenn Hartwig, declare that I have a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 11.1. I've had a number of interactions with the subject of the lease in relation to council performance over the last 3.5 years. I don't believe that it'll interfere with my ability to deal with this matter. I'd ask that I could stay in the room.
I'll move it, just saying.
You might have to take over, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
You have to do the vote.
I can move the chicken say, can I?
As the deputy, you have to chair the meeting while I make the declaration.
That's right. You can do it, so I should be able to do it. Get them in.
Yeah.
It's not there.
No, that's true. I've just handed the meeting over to the Deputy Mayor to deal with this matter.
Okay, can I ask someone to move that? Moved by Councillor Preenham, second by Councillor Waldorf. Any discussion on the matter?
Oh, yeah, can I ask, is your conversations with them just been liaising between council and staff and the leasee? Is that the extent?
No, it was more, it started in 2020 in relation to a lack of maintenance by council and the resulting flooding occurred again twice in 2020, again in 2022. He did attempt to contact me during this event, but those, I just handed that straight over to the CEO.
Yeah, so it's really just a case of your position as the mayor. He's the one that you contacted, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Fredman, do you want to say anything on the matter?
The mayor's fulfilling a role. I don't see any evidence whatsoever of it being a private matter or a personal gain matter. Knowing the mayor, he probably didn't want to be there listening to the complaint as well. So it's just comes with the territory when you're a mayor, and I don't think it's a reason to leave the meeting.
Councillor Warner?
No, nothing orders.
All right. Okay, so happy to put that to the vote. All those in favour of the mayor staying in the meeting? Carried. There you go, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Someone to move that we go into committee. Councillor Smerdon, someone to second. Councillor Polly. All those in favour? I just had to wait for Councillor Devereux. It's a bit of late time there.
As usual.
Mate, recommendations passed. Just if we can just shut the live stream down.
Just be over to 8.
Thank you. All good. Right, back in open session. Councillor Polly has moved, Councillor Stewart has seconded in relation to recommendation 1. All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. And in relation to recommendation 2, we have Councillor Smerdon moving, Councillor Devro second.
It's still the old one there.
It's 3.
Yeah,
Oh, you fixed
three
it.
not to.
Right.
We have to have a third recommendation, not change the second.
It's because it was director-led, not council-led.
It's just that you keep the same, if that's okay, have exactly the same change.
Because it was, the recommendation was changed by staff, not by council. So recommendation 2 moved by Councillor Smerdon, second by Councillor Devro. All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. That concludes our items for today. Our meeting is closed and thank you for your attendance.